All because I accidentally spilled hot water on my wife Christina's secretary's hand. She locked me in the sauna for 8 hours. I was let out just before I passed out. Christina sternly warned me, "This is just a little lesson. If I see you hurt Eric again, I won't let you off easy." Lying on the stretcher, I calmly agreed. The day I was discharged, standing at the door, I could hear the lively chatter inside. "Christina, you hate Oliver so much. Why not get a divorce?" Pesky friend asked. Christina clicked her tongue in annoyance. "My mom said if I initiate the divorce, she'll give the company away. I don't know what Oliver has done to charm her," she said impatiently. Eric chimed in, "Christina, I think he's just after your family's money." Everyone seemed to agree. I didn't stand at the doorway feeling sorry as I used to. I just walked right in. The room fell silent instantly when they saw me. Christina turned to me and said, "What bad luck? Eric's birthday is today. Go stay at the house in the suburbs for 2 days. Don't ruin our fun." Everyone was watching me, waiting to see if I'd lose it. Usually, when Christina provokes me, my reactions provide them amusement. But not this time. I simply said, "Okay," and shut the bedroom door. Lying on the bed, I got a message from Christina's mom. "Oliver, are you really thinking of leaving Christina?" I looked at the photo on Christina's nightstand, her beaming, arm in arm with another man. It had been there since I moved in. That one time I accidentally knocked it over during cleaning. She screamed at me, "Auntie, as you know, I started this because of you. Now that Christina's over it, there's no point in continuing." She sighed, regretful. "Too bad. I'll transfer the money I promised after it's all over to your account soon." I stared at the photo, then finally spoke. "Okay, thank you. Having stayed 6 years for Christina, it's time I lived my own life." After the call, I couldn't snap out of it. The door suddenly opened, and Christina came in with Eric. "Change the sheets." "Eric's staying over," she ordered. Eric gave me a pitying look and said, "Christina, no need. I don't want Oliver to feel bad." Christina glared at me. "Hurry up and change them." I couldn't help but chuckle at Eric's face, which looked somewhat like the man in the photo. If someone else can make her happy, I guess my job's done. We'll go our separate ways from here. Eric whispered something to Christina, making her eyes light up. "Oliver, you don't need to move out. I'm used to you being here. Stay." Her usual demeaning tone didn't faze me. I went to the cabinet, took out a box of condoms, and handed it to them. "We're not divorced yet. If you get pregnant, it might not look good for the company." Christina was momentarily dumbfounded, holding the box. I placed it in her hand and left. While lying in the guest room, my email pinged with a new message. "Oliver, congratulations on your acceptance to our school's jewelry design program. Please report soon." Reading this email, I sensed a whiff of freedom. It made me smile. Finally, a step forward in my stagnant life. The next morning, Christina's assistant was at the living room when I got up. Looking at the folder she held, I said, "If you have something to do, go ahead. I'll get it signed." With a hesitant glance at her watch, she handed me the folder and left. I slipped the divorce papers into the folder and started making breakfast. When Christina got up, I was eating noodles. She looked at me disdainfully. "You're eating that? I want porridge." Finishing my meal, I handed her the folder. "The assistant sent this over this morning." Without a glance, she signed it, taking the chance to criticize me for stealing her assistant's job. With the folder in hand, I prepared to leave. "I'm heading to the hospital later," I told her calmly. Christina wanted to demand porridge, but Eric came out of the bedroom. "Christina, am I up late?" As she turned to talk to him, I left, not seeing her loaded expression. Outside, I pulled the divorce papers from the folder. Maybe it's our years together that made her not even look at the documents before signing. The divorce cooling-off period is 30 days. After that, I leave. Returning from the law firm, I went to pack my things. Seeing me, Christina looked surprised. "Didn't I say you didn't need to move?" I paused, saying dismissively, "Now that Eric's here, it's inconvenient for me to come and go." Her words got caught in her throat. Since returning from the hospital, she noticed I was a bit different. Before she could ask, Eric called for dinner. Christina went out, and I closed my eyes, packing. Looking at the small space of clothes I had, I laughed to myself. 6 years of marriage, and this collection was all I owned here. After packing up my clothes, I put the gift I got for Christina in a trash bag. We've been married for so long, and for every holiday and birthday, I prepared something for her. Now they're just collecting dust in a corner. If that's the case, there's no point in keeping them around anymore. As I dragged my suitcase to the guest room, Eric happily invited me to eat with them. Christina was clumsily peeling shrimp for him and didn't even glance at me. I forced a smile and politely said, "No, thanks. You guys go ahead." Christina looked up at me for the first time when she heard that. I calmly averted my gaze and walked toward the guest room. "Wait," Christina suddenly called out to me. I turned back, confused, and looked at her. "Come eat with us," she said, sounding a bit awkward. I looked at her, surprised, but ended up refusing. Christina seemed frustrated by my refusal, snapping, "Eat if you want or don't." After setting down my luggage, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My face was fair and delicate, but when I tried to smile, it felt like I was wearing a mask. There was an indescribable exhaustion in my eyes. I chuckled bitterly. I hardly looked like someone in their 20s. Just hang in there a little longer and I'll finally be free. I was on the edge of sleep when Christina barged in. Panicked. "Oliver, come with me to take Eric to the hospital." He burned his hand. I frowned, thinking to refuse, but Christina already had me out the door. "Christina, don't bother Eric with a hospital visit." "I'm fine, just a little sting," Eric said, holding his burned hand. I noticed the drops of chili oil on his hand. Looked painful. "Burns can be serious or minor, but they might leave scars," Christina said anxiously. Watching all this, my eyes drifted to the scar on my own hand. That day, when Christina had friends over for hot pot, Eric had deliberately poured the boiling soup on my hand. I was about to confront him, but Christina shielded him, giving me a contemptuous look. "Eric didn't do it on purpose. You seem fine, so stop making a fuss." In the end, I took some painkillers to dull it down and went to the hospital by myself. The scar stayed there. Seeing Christina so worried now made me realize she knew burns could scar. But back then it was only me who got hurt. As we took Eric to the hospital, we hit the evening rush hour. Christina kept urging me to drive faster. Once the light turned green, a car suddenly veered out of control, heading straight for us. The moment we collided, I felt a crushing pain in my lower body. Christina's voice came from the back seat, urgent. "Oliver, how are you feeling? The ambulance is on its way, hang in there." Hearing her voice, I realized she seemed fine. The back of the car must have hit the crash barrier. "Oliver," she started again, but Eric's cries of pain interrupted. "Eric, where are you hurt? What hurts?" "I'm just in a bit of pain in my hand." "Don't worry about me. Oliver seems really hurt. Go check on him," Eric whispered weakly. Christina was even more distressed by his words. She told him to hold on. The ambulance would be there soon. When the ambulance arrived, Christina led the EMTs toward Eric. "Here's someone injured. Come quickly." The urgency in her voice made them think it was serious, so one went with her. Before long, I heard the doctor's stern voice. "This is a waste of our time. He's fine." Christina, who usually cared about her image, threw a fit at the scene of the accident, yelling about filing a complaint for neglect. The doctor reluctantly bandaged Eric up. As Christina was about to take Eric to the hospital, she finally noticed the injuries on my legs. She froze, true panic in her eyes for the first time. "Oliver, does it hurt? I'll find you the best doctor." Eric quietly said, "Oliver, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have gotten Christina to take me to the hospital. I should have just handled the pain myself to avoid all this." His pitiful demeanor tugged at Christina's heartstrings. She rushed back to comfort him and forgot about me completely. When the medical staff asked if I had any family, I calmly closed my eyes and said no. "Let's go." At the hospital, I needed emergency surgery. "You'll need to stay in the hospital for a while," the doctor said. I nodded and asked if he could arrange an aide for me. Surprisingly, On the third day of my hospital stay, Christina visited with a lunchbox. She checked my wounds with a slight tone of reproach. "Why didn't you tell me you were hurt this badly?" I smiled at her question. When she saw my smile, she hesitated, her face showing a hint of embarrassment. "I was distracted by Eric's injury that day. I didn't notice you were hurt too," she explained. "Yeah, I'm fine. You should go take care of Eric," I said calmly. She paused, to Eric aback. Being turned down, her face showed a trace of displeasure, but she managed to hold it back, seeing my pale face. "I had the housekeeper prepare you some nourishing meals. You should eat," she offered. I glanced at the shrimp in the box, gently pushing it away. "No, thank you." Before I finished, Christina abruptly tossed the food onto the floor. "Oliver, you're so ungrateful. Eat it if you want or don't." She dropped the line and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I looked at the mess on the floor and buzzed for the nurse to help clean up. The nurse glanced at the spilled food and asked, puzzled, "Didn't the doctor say you could only have liquids for now? Seems like the person bringing you meals isn't paying much attention." I just smiled without responding. After that day, Christina never showed up again. Eric sent me pictures every day. Christina and him watching the sunrise, stargazing, and trips to the racetrack. The day before I was discharged, Eric sent me their flight tickets to Europe. I always said one line, and Christina made it happen. I didn't reply. Instead, I listened carefully to the doctor's instructions. After getting home, I went straight to my room, grabbed my suitcase, and left the divorce papers on the table. Without hesitation, I left this cage I had lived in for 6 years. Goodbye, Christina. Sitting on the plane heading abroad, I looked out at the clouds and couldn't help but laugh. After frittering away 6 years, I was finally free to go find my own life. As soon as the plane landed, I got a message on my phone. "You have received 50 million. After that, I immediately canceled my phone number, cutting off any way for Christina to contact me. After taking care of everything, I headed straight to the school to check in and move into the dorm. That night, I had the best sleep I've had in forever. In my dreams, I saw myself from 6 years ago. When I was in college, a roommate falsely accused me of theft, and the whole school knew about it. When the counselor took me to the principal's office, no matter how much I denied it, they insisted I was guilty, demanding compensation and an apology. I asked for a police investigation, but the principal and counselor stopped me. Just when they were about to force me to write a confession, Christina's mom swooped in, saved me from their clutches, and called the cops. Later, I found out that the principal and counselor had Tyrick money from my roommate to ensure I wouldn't qualify to study abroad. After everything settled, I formally thanked her for her help. She sighed and said, "If you really want to thank me, do me a favor." Then she told me about Christina and her first love, Henry. They grew up together, but the day before their wedding, Henry died in an accident trying to save Christina. After Christina woke up and learned about it, she was devastated, rarely leaving her room. They say the best way to forget someone is to start a new relationship. Her mom asked me to help Christina move on, promising money once it was over. Grateful for her help and understanding a mother's desperation, I agreed. After a chance meeting, I started pursuing Christina. Eventually, under her mom's encouragement, we got married. People said I was love-struck, that I lost all pride for a woman. Others claimed I was after her family's money. I tried my best for her over these 6 years, but I couldn't compete with someone who looked like Henry. Now that Eric was around, I could finally leave Christina behind. The next day, my new academic journey began. Campus life was vibrant. Besides classes, I joined a ton of extracurriculars. With the 50 million from Christina's mother, I could live freely and happily. While I was enjoying my newfound freedom, Christina was in a very different place. When she returned from Europe, she instinctively called out my name, but I wasn't there to respond. Christina frowned, asking the housekeeper why I wasn't back yet. After some reluctance, the housekeeper finally confessed I had already left. Christina waved it off casually, saying not to bother looking for me. "Oliver's just bluffing, trying to scare me. Let him be." But her words caught in her throat when she spotted the divorce agreement I left on the table. As she stared at the signed papers, she remembered the contract I handed her that day. Fury burned in her eyes. Oliver, you've really outdone yourself. She couldn't believe I wanted a divorce. After all, I had always seemed devoted just to her. Everyone called me her lapdog. How could I just leave so easily? Christina convinced herself I would come back. Meanwhile, her family walked on eggshells, terrified of setting her off. It wasn't until her mom handed her the divorce certificate that she realized I was gone for good. Christina's face shifted from confusion to rage in an instant. She couldn't fathom I had been planning this for a month. Having spent 6 years with me, the abrupt end left Christina struggling to imagine her life now. Her mom told her about the agreement we had. Christina refused to believe that everything I did for her was just a repayment of a debt. From the day we got our marriage certificate, I kept a divorce agreement ready, reminding myself, but people aren't machines. Feelings grew. When I started to care for Christina, she shattered my hopes repeatedly. Christina kept trying to call me, but I never answered. In frustration, she threw her phone at the wall. Oliver, don't ever show your face to me again, she screamed. While abroad, I ran into an old college buddy, David. He was the only one who stood by me during the false accusations. Back then, he warned me not to repay kindness this way, but I didn't listen. I never expected he'd end up teaching at the same school. It was through him that I heard the latest about Christina. Did you hear? Christina's getting engaged to that male assistant. I paused mid-bite but kept a straight face. Makes sense, I replied. Eric looks just like Henry. David said Christina's engagement party was a big deal. Practically all the well-known families were invited. People in the circle said she must be serious about it. Otherwise, why make such a fuss? Especially since she didn't even want to have a wedding with her last fiancé. When I heard this, I didn't feel a thing. When I was with Christina, it was just a task for me, let alone after everything she did. Now knowing she's getting engaged, I actually felt relieved. What caught me off guard was a week later when David came to me with gossip. Christina ran off on her engagement day. Just hearing his excited voice, I knew things must have gotten dramatic. On the day of her engagement, Christina told everyone she regretted it, saying she loved someone else. Eric went nuts at the scene. Christina got fed up with him and kicked him out. After telling me all this, David added mysteriously, the day after the engagement, Christina started asking around about you. She asked a lot of your friends if they knew where you were. She somehow managed to track me down through someone. I asked confused, did something get into her? David sipped his coffee and then told me. After I left, Christina had a fever for 3 days. Back when I was around, I'd take care of her 24/7. Now, with nobody putting her first, she started missing how attentive I was. Plus, after I left, some of her friends started saying how considerate I was. For various reasons, Christina became desperate to find me. Too bad she asked everyone, and no one knew where I was. She even went to her mom, who told her she gave me some money and hadn't contacted me since. Christina seemed to have gone mad, leaving her company affairs aside, only thinking about finding me. After hearing all this, I just sighed. She really lost her mind. Someone who used to find even looking at me annoying, now frantically searching for me? Crazy, right? But none of this affected my feelings anymore. After that day, I rarely heard news about Christina, fully focusing on my studies. While continuing my education, David and I started a jewelry designer brand. It took me 6 years, but I finally started living the life I wanted. Time flew by, and it was graduation season again. I finally experienced my long overdue graduation ceremony. Handing me a speech, David asked what my plans were. The brand we started had grown quite popular thanks to our hard work. Plenty of people sought us out to design jewelry. After some thought, I honestly said I want to go back home. David agreed since our clientele was mainly based there. Still, he hesitated. Christina's been asking about you for years. If my family hadn't intervened, she might have found you by now. He warned, going back, she'll probably find you quickly. Are you sure? I shook my head and said, I have to face it sooner or later. Can't avoid going home forever. The day after the ceremony, I packed my bags and headed back. When the plane landed, the scenery was both familiar and foreign. Taking a deep breath, I reminded myself, it's a new beginning. Back home, while looking for a store location, we began planning a small jewelry exhibition. I took a day to visit my mom's grave. Seeing fresh sunflowers there puzzled me. Christina always brought sunflowers. As I sat, chatting with my mom about recent events, a relative passed by. "Hey Oliver, you graduated and came back? I have to say, your wife is amazing." I stared in confusion. "In the years you were away, she visited on holidays and donated under your name to help fix village roads. Everyone here knows you found a great wife." Hearing this left me even more confused about Christina's intentions. But there wasn't much time to dwell. Once we settled the store location, I got busy with the shop renovations. Some jewelry for the exhibition was still under design. I was busy and fulfilled every day, with no time to think about Christina. The day before the jewelry show, I spotted Christina's name on the guest list. Concerned, David offered, "If you don't want to face her, I can handle things." Unfazed, I shook my head. "As long as I'm here, we'll come across each other sooner or later." Reassured, David nodded. On the day of the exhibition, visitors flocked in, following signs into the gallery. From the second floor, I easily spotted Christina among the crowd. She looked more worn out, her eyes carrying fatigue. I watched as she abruptly stopped in front of one of my necklace designs, her eyes welling up. Soon, a staff member informed me someone bought all my designs, requesting to meet me. I agreed. In the instant I opened the conference room door, Christina rushed forward to hug me. Her voice choked up. "Oliver, I finally found you. Where have you been all these years? I've looked in so many countries." I gently pushed her away, maintaining a calm demeanor, and spoke softly. "Miss Christina, why did you want to see me?" When Christina heard what I called her, she looked kinda confused for a moment. "Oliver, what did you call me?" I repeated what I had just said. Back when we just got married, I used to call her by her name. But Christina had given me this disdainful look and said, "We're not on a first-name basis, are we?" Christina looked at me with teary eyes. "No, you can call me Christina. Didn't you used to call me that?" I frowned a bit. "Miss Christina, I don't think we're on a first-name basis, are we?" The words I once said to her came back around like a boomerang, leaving her stunned for a few seconds. I used that moment to say goodbye. "Miss Christina, let's not dwell on the past. It's time to move on. Thanks for liking my designs, but I've got something to attend to, so I'll take my leave." I didn't wait for a response before walking out of the meeting room. My debts to her family were settled long ago. Christina and I are just strangers now. Didn't think she'd turn up at the store the next day, holding a bunch of red roses. I looked at her puzzled. Everything I needed to say was said yesterday. What else is left between us? After a few minutes of staring in silence, Christina finally spoke. "Oliver, why did you divorce me?" I looked at her calmly. Once I did what I had to, of course I had to leave. From the day I left, I knew Christina would eventually find out about the promise I'd made to her mom. So I told her honestly then and there. She looked at me, eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't believe it, Oliver. I don't believe your look and all the kindness were fake. You might deny it, but your eyes don't lie." I let out a cold laugh. "Does it matter now? We're over already. Or are you trying to prove your charm?" Christina shook her head, denying. "No, I just want to know if you ever loved me." Without hesitation, I said, "No. From start to finish, it was about the promise to your mom. I was with you out of gratitude. Our relationship began with a purpose. How could there be love?" Her face turned pale as I spoke. "Whatever reaction she has now, I don't care. I just want to wrap this up and rid myself of her. I don't want to see her in my future." Yet this proud woman kept showing up every day after that conversation. And with red roses each time. Every time I threw them in the trash, I let out a cold laugh. Being married to her for so long, she still doesn't get me. Red roses that need attention aren't my thing. I like roses that symbolize endless hope. The 10th time I planned to ditch her gifts, Christina finally stopped me. Her face showed displeasure, but she kept her voice controlled. Oliver, why won't you accept my gifts? I showed no mercy. Do you know what our relationship is? Why should I take your things? I don't accept gifts from strangers. Christina denied it. After 6 years of marriage, how could we be strangers? I let out a small laugh. Those 6 years were colder than strangers. She'd be gone for a week, and even when home, she'd boss me around. I looked at her and asked the question that had been bugging me. Christina, shouldn't you be happy I filed for divorce? Now you can marry Eric. Why bother me? She took a deep breath, and through her teary eyes, she responded, No, I don't want to marry Eric. I was just briefly infatuated because he looks like Henry. Truth is, I'd been used to you, no, I'd fallen for you long ago. I just ignored my feelings because of my fixation on Henry. Listening to how she missed me after I left, I finally understood why she did this. I directly cut through her endless apologies. Christina, can't your family afford a maid? What you just said doesn't show any love for me. You're just used to having me around. Do you really think you love me? You're just fooling yourself. Christina's face turned grim after hearing that. She always thought she loved me, truly. But when I ruthlessly exposed her real thoughts, her face showed disbelief. Before she could justify herself again, I cut her off coldly. Christina, since we're apart, let's leave it at that. We should live our own lives and never cross paths again. After those words, I turned and left, and Christina stopped appearing in front of me after that. Yet, any time I went home, I felt a hot gaze on my back. David asked if he should take care of it for me. I refused. Let Christina follow if she wants. Nothing she does now will affect my life. No need to waste resources on her. During this time, a client offered extra money for a rush job on a set of wedding jewelry. I've been working till midnight, heading home at 12. The day I finished the designs, it was already 2 a.m. when I left the office. That night, I felt like someone besides Christina was tailing me, so I quick-arrested my pace. But as I approached the neighborhood gate, Eric jumped out of the bushes with a knife. Oliver, I finally found you. Seeing the crazed look on his face, I stepped back and coldly asked what he wanted. Eric screamed at me with a furious expression. It's all your fault. If it wasn't for you, I would have had Christina by now. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this mess. A few days ago, I heard from a friend that Christina had fired Eric and told others in the industry to never hire him again. In the business world, many people give Christina some face for that. Plus, Eric had his own issues, so life's been getting worse for him by the day. Now, he's blaming all his misfortunes on me, with bitterness clouding his judgment. Eric charged at me with a knife. As I backed away, I stumbled and fell to the ground. In a split second, I thought to myself, today must be my unlucky day. Just as the knife was about to strike, someone suddenly jumped in front of me. The knife that was meant for me ended up hitting Christina instead. Seeing the woman lying in a pool of blood, I felt dazed. I couldn't understand why she would do such a thing. Eric, seeing his knife hit Christina, couldn't help but shout, "Do you really love him this much? You said you loved me before." But before he could get a response from Christina, the security from the apartment complex subdued him. Christina scanned me over, and only after seeing I was okay did she relax and smile. "Oliver, as long as you're fine." I didn't respond, just stared at her in a daze. The ambulance quickly rushed us to the hospital. I sat in front of the operating room, staring at the word surgery with my mind blank. I never thought Christina actually liked me, but today, she jumped in front of me without hesitation. Christina's mom quickly arrived at the hospital. She looked at me with some disapproval in her eyes. "Since you left, why come back? If I had known this would happen, I would have never sought you out." Her words wiped away all my hesitation. "To be honest, you're partly to blame for Christina ending up like this." Just as she was about to say more, the operating room door opened. She hurriedly went to ask the doctor about Christina's condition. As soon as the doctor said there was no major problem, I turned and left. She was full of resentment seeing me leave without hesitation, but due to my recent success, she couldn't do anything. I thought after this, she would stop Christina from seeing me. But surprisingly, within a week, I got a call from her. Her tone was anxious, almost pleading. "Oliver, can you come to the hospital to see Christina? I'm begging you." When I showed up, the buzzing conversation in the room suddenly fell silent. "You've already cut ties with them. Now that this happened to Christina because of you, her mom won't let it slide," David said. I patted his shoulder to reassure him. I'm not the naive guy I used to be. When I got to the hospital and saw a barely recognizable Christina, I was shocked. When she saw me, her eyes lit up a bit. "Oliver, you're here. Do I look really ugly now?" Seeing the frustrated and helpless people around her, I instantly realized Christina was using a hunger strike to threaten them. "Christina, this is the last time I'll see you. The 6 years I wasted on you are enough. I don't want anything to do with you in the future." Ignoring the hurt in Christina's eyes, I continued. "Whether you go on a hunger strike or do something drastic, it's none of my business. Please don't disturb my life anymore." With that, I didn't look at her again and turned to leave. After that day, I never took a call from them again. The chapter between Christina and me is closed. Life is long, and there's nothing you can't get past. Only a bright future ahead.